Nearly $1 billion vanished.
No alarms screamed. No guards confronted masked intruders.
No vault was physically cracked open. Instead, millions disappeared silently, without a trace. This was no ordinary bank robbery. This was a crime waged in the shadows of cyberspace, where an invisible thief preyed on one of the world's most trusted financial institutions. What you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about how money can be stolen. It will show you how technology meant to protect us can be turned against us. And it all began in Bangladesh, in the early months of 2016. Before you dive deeper, if stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You don't want to miss a single twist in this tale. Bangladesh Bank stood as the central pillar of the nation's financial system. It was the powerhouse behind every transaction, every policy, and every monetary decision that shaped the country's economy. Thousands of workers operated day and night within its walls, managing accounts, overseeing loans, and facilitating payments not just within Bangladesh but across the globe. To the public, the bank was a symbol of stability, a fortress guarding the country's wealth. The international financial world trusted it, too. It handled billions of dollars moving in and out of the country every year, with connections to banks from New York to Tokyo. Yet, beneath this surface of order and control, a quiet vulnerability was growing. A vulnerability no one saw coming, and one that would soon be exploited with devastating effect. By 2016, Bangladesh Bank had embraced the digital age. The once paper-heavy transactions had transformed into swift electronic messages coursing through cables and satellites. At the center of this network was the SWIFT system, a global messaging platform banks used to transfer money safely and securely. It was supposed to be invincible, protected by layers of security and constant surveillance. The bank's IT team was proud of their work. They monitored firewalls, scanned for intrusions, and trusted their defenses. Their screens showed green lights. Logs showed nothing unusual. Everything seemed normal. But what they didn't realize was that the attackers had already found a way in. The enemy was inside, watching, waiting patiently. Every keystroke they made was carefully hidden, every footprint carefully erased. And when the moment came, the quiet calm of the bank would explode into chaos. It started with a simple email, an innocent-looking message that slipped through the bank's security filters. Someone inside the bank opened it. Just one click was all it took. Unseen by the staff, malicious code quietly took root in the bank's computer system. It spread slowly, silently, like a shadow moving through a crowded room unnoticed. The hackers had spent months preparing for this moment, researching, probing, and finding the tiniest crack in the bank's digital armor. They knew exactly where to strike, how to move, and how to stay hidden.
No alarms sounded.
No one suspected a thing. Behind the scenes, the attackers gained access to the SWIFT messaging system, the very heart of international money transfers. Once inside, the hackers moved with surgical precision. They studied the bank's network, mapping every connection, every protocol. They learned how transactions were authorized, how approvals were logged, and where their fraudulent commands would go unnoticed. Every step was calculated to avoid detection. The hackers deleted logs, masked their IP addresses, and created fake accounts to funnel the stolen money. Meanwhile, the bank's cybersecurity team monitored their systems as usual. Firewalls were intact. Antivirus software ran scans. The green status lights kept blinking. Nothing looked out of the ordinary. The team remained confident, unaware that a phantom threat was dismantling their defenses from within. The hackers prepared their strike, sending fake payment requests amounting to nearly $1 billion. Each transaction was crafted to look legitimate, mimicking the patterns of regular business. Their timing was perfect, sending messages during busy hours to blend into the noise. They targeted accounts at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, requesting fund transfers to overseas accounts linked to casinos and shell companies. They hoped the sheer volume and speed of these requests would overwhelm any manual checks, allowing most of the money to slip through. For weeks, the hackers rehearsed. They double-checked every command, every spelling, every code. They were ready to pull off one of the most audacious cyber heists in history. Under the cover of routine banking hours, the hackers launched their attack. One by one, fraudulent SWIFT messages were sent to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Each message requested the transfer of millions of dollars, money that did not belong to them but would soon be vanishing from Bangladesh banks' accounts. These requests were disguised perfectly, using genuine credentials stolen from the bank system. To the receiving bank, these orders appeared legitimate. Behind the scenes, the hackers held their breath, watching as the funds began to move. Tens of millions, then hundreds of millions, each transaction chipping away at the bank's reserves. Some of the money was sent to gambling junkets in the Philippines, destined for casinos known for lax regulations. Other sums disappeared into shadowy shell companies, impossible to trace. Every successful transfer was a silent victory, but not every transfer went unnoticed. At the receiving banks, subtle irregularities began to emerge. One payment's destination name was misspelled. Another transfer request raised suspicion due to an unusually high amount. The Federal Reserve Bank's compliance team flagged these transactions and delayed their processing. Back in Bangladesh, the bank's own finance department started noticing discrepancies in their accounts. But without clear evidence of foul play, they hesitated to sound the alarm. Meanwhile, the hackers grew anxious. Their window of opportunity was shrinking. They scrambled to cover their tracks, deleting logs and sending false error messages to stall investigations. Yet, with every passing hour, the net was tightening around them. It was a tiny error, a misspelling of foundation as foundation in one of the transfer requests, that unraveled everything. This minor typo caught the eye of a vigilant compliance officer at the Federal Reserve. A deeper investigation was launched, tracing the transfers back to Bangladesh Bank. Panic erupted on the hackers' side. They tried to halt remaining transactions and wipe evidence, but it was too late. At Bangladesh Bank, alarm bells finally rang. Senior officials gathered in emergency meetings, their faces pale with shock and disbelief. They were under attack, not by armed robbers, but by invisible thieves wielding nothing but lines of code. The heist that had started silently was now impossible to ignore. The moment the finance team at Bangladesh Bank confirmed the unauthorized transfers, a heavy silence filled the room. The numbers didn't add up. Hundreds of millions had vanished from the bank's accounts, stolen in plain sight. Executives stared at glowing screens, struggling to grasp the scale of the disaster. The bank's cybersecurity chief sat frozen, realizing that what they feared had become reality. Their defenses had been penetrated. Panic swept through the corridors. Phones rang off the hook. Officials scrambled to piece together how such a catastrophic breach could have gone unnoticed for so long. The nation held its breath as news leaked out. Bangladesh Bank, the guardian of the country's financial system, had been hacked. Questions exploded everywhere. Who was responsible? How could this happen? And more importantly, could the money be recovered? As news of the cyber heist spread, the international financial community watched with shock and concern. The FBI and multiple agencies across Asia and the United States joined forces with Bangladeshi authorities to investigate the breach. SWIFT, the global messaging system that was supposed to be unbreakable, promised a full review of its security protocols. Diplomatic tensions flared. Bangladesh government faced intense pressure from allies and international banks. The country's reputation in the global financial market was at risk. At the same time, casino operators in the Philippines, unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, became entangled in laundering the stolen money, attracting the attention of law enforcement there. It was no longer just a financial crime. It was a global scandal shaking the foundations of international banking. Investigators faced a maze of offshore accounts, shell companies, and a labyrinth of financial transactions designed to hide the stolen funds. Millions had already disappeared into casinos, converted into chips, and gambled away or laundered through complex networks. Tracking the money became a race against time, with law enforcement trying desperately to follow the money trail before it vanished forever. Meanwhile, the hackers enjoyed their ill-gotten gains, living lavishly in the shadows, confident that their digital footprints were covered. But every extravagant purchase, every suspicious transaction was another thread for the investigators to pull. The chase had only just begun. Months after the heist, the web began to unravel. Authorities in the Philippines arrested key players involved in laundering the stolen money. Casino employees, financial brokers, and middlemen faced charges ranging from money laundering to conspiracy. Yet the masterminds behind the cyber attack remained ghosts. Despite intensive international cooperation, the hackers' true identities were elusive, hidden behind layers of encryption, proxies, and anonymous accounts. Bangladesh mourned its loss but found solace in the fact that some measure of justice was being served. The arrests sent a warning: even the most sophisticated crimes leave cracks. Families of victims, both in Bangladesh and overseas, followed the news with a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that criminals were caught, frustration that the full story remained incomplete. The fallout forced banks worldwide to rethink their defenses. SWIFT implemented enhanced security protocols, including mandatory two-factor authentication and real-time transaction monitoring. Bangladesh Bank revamped its cybersecurity infrastructure, investing millions to prevent any repeat of this breach. Cybersecurity experts emphasized the evolving nature of threats, warning that attackers no longer needed to storm physical vaults. They could now breach the most secure systems from a laptop halfway across the world. The heist became a case study in vulnerability, a grim reminder that technology's progress must be matched by vigilance. Though millions were lost and shadows of the hackers lingered, the Bangladesh Bank cyber heist remains a landmark in cybercrime history, a story of audacity, skill, and the fragile trust we place in technology. Justice had been partially served, but the hackers themselves slipped through the cracks, their true faces unknown. Still, the world had learned a painful lesson. The Invisible Heist was not just a crime of money, but a crime of confidence. If this story shook you, if it made you rethink what security really means, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us for more stories where truth meets technology, because the next invisible threat could be closer than you think.